started here in just a second. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio. This is episode number 33 of the radio show and is our 325th episode overall of the Assembly Call, which we are recording on the evening of Thursday, June 29th, 2017. I'm Andy Bottoms, your host this week for Assembly Call Radio, where each week we break down the most important IU basketball stories from the past 7 days. Jared Morse is taking a well-deserved week off, and I guess the B team, at least in terms of host, would be me. So we'll get through this together as we always do. Remember, once the season starts, you can catch us immediately after every IU basketball game on the Assembly Call IU postgame show, or you can watch us live at assemblycall.com. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel or just go to assemblycall.com/YouTube. And if you can't catch one of our shows live, you can always catch up with the podcast. Just search for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts, and you'll find us. So let's begin where we always begin, and that's with the Hoosier Proud banner moment. So I'll step in for Jared. There'll be no bottoms line tonight, but here we'll talk about what my banner moment would be. And I guess I guess I would be hesitant to put anything other than Jared and I were able to touch on this a little bit toward the end of the show last week, but really as we got off the air. OG had gotten drafted, so we didn't have a lot of time to talk about that. So, really we're, a week from the NBA draft last week. Saw 2 IU players get selected within the, OG in the first round, Thomas Bryant in the first half of the second round. Certainly great news for the program. And I think, hopefully something we can see continue to build. That's one of the things in the Tom Crean era that really IU succeeded at, and where they had not a ton of draft picks there for a while, and that's really become something that they've been able to build on, and hopefully Archie Miller will be able to do the same. I think maybe that's Deron Davis as he's gotten into shape, and all the excitement that he brought last year and what we think he can be moving forward could be another guy on the roster, but hopefully that's I guess a tradition or a trend at the very least that Archie's able to continue. And certainly we wish the best of luck to both OG and Thomas and James Blackman Jr. As he signed with the 76ers as a free agent and will play for them in the Summer League. So certainly wish all those guys good luck, whether that be in the NBA, the G League. I can't believe I actually used it and called it that, or overseas, wherever they are. I know IU fans got a lot of enjoyment out of watching those guys play. A couple of them certainly showed up on the most important players of the Tom Crean era that Jared and I discussed last week, and a lot of IU fans will be rooting for those guys as they move forward from IU. So with that, I will introduce my co-host for tonight. I did not do a lengthy and flowery introduction of one Ryan Phillips of thebiglead.com, although I may let him do his own. This will probably serve as the perfect segue for him to pat himself on the back about how he did with his mock draft. So, giving Ryan the opportunity to brag about himself is really the best intro of all. So maybe I did do a better job than I thought. So with that, Ryan, what's your rant for this week?
Well, that's why you're the B team, Andy, because you don't prepare these long, ridiculous intros for me. But no, I
just want to go along with the narrative that you and I don't like each other, and so I wanted to put as little work into it as possible. So
it's funny, he's behind.
Yeah, here's Ryan. Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, Andy and I actually like each other more than either one of us like Jared. So we can say that because he's not here and he's not going to listen. So I did go 10 for my first 10 on my mock draft last week. So yeah, I will pat myself on the back for that. 11 of the first 12 I got right, and I picked. I was correct that the Indiana Pacers would select TJ Leaf, despite at least 36 people telling me I was crazy for that. But no, I wanted to talk about the scheduling issues that have plagued Indiana for a long time. This has been a topic of discussion on this show forever, and I thought that it was really smart that Fred Glass and the athletic department wrote into the contract a bonus for for Archie Miller for how few games he has against lower tier teams, and we'll get into the details of that later in the show. But I thought that was great. It showed a commitment that to take Indiana back to sort of what it was, where it was a program that went up against the best players, or best teams and best players in the nation, was not afraid to go toe-to-toe with those teams. Even if you're teams in the 150s. It's better than sub 300 teams. So I think that it'll be great to see Indiana get back to that. It'll be a better product on the floor for the Hoosiers and their fans to watch and enjoy. And it's a challenge for the players. And the preseason, the pre-conference season is about getting better. It's not just about racking up wins. Yeah, you want to win a lot of games, but the biggest factor is to get better for that conference tournament, for that conference, and then on to the tournament. So I would say I thought that was a great move by the athletic department, and hats off to Fred Glass for backing a deal like that. It's clear that Archie Miller was willing to accept that, and is certainly would prefer to play a tougher schedule. He certainly did at Dayton, and I think that that's going to carry over here.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about the schedule. That's been a big topic of the last week, so we'll hit that for sure. But before we do that, I want to introduce my other co-host for tonight, Zach McCright, who I assume is doing his part in IU's recruitment of Romeo Langford by circling his home, making sure that opposing coaches can't get there.
It's the least you can do, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too much to ask. I don't feel like. So I can only assume that you're doing that. And even if you're not, I would suggest you not admit to it here. So Zach, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes.
What's your? I don't know what we settled on. Whether it's McCright's Minute, we could pay homage to Saved by the Bell with the Zach Attack reference. We can really do whatever you want.
Please, not the Zach Attack. I had to hear that my entire childhood. Please no.
Hey, my last name's Bottom, so we can't really. We can't. Let's not have a contest about who had it worse in that regard.
By the way, yes, I'm doing all those things with Romeo. Yes. Wink, wink. By the way, I'll get to see him a lot this year. I'm actually going back to I can make this part of my, since Ryan stole all the schedule stuff. I'll throw in this, but
Playing Thunder on a weekly basis. It's my job.
I know it. And I got my start in radio and all that stuff, the media stuff, doing play-by-play. It's what I wanted to do. So from the age 14 on, I was interning and all that stuff, doing Southern Indiana high school sports play-by-play, especially basketball. It's what I always wanted to do. And now that I've moved back to the area, for those who don't know, I did 3 years of sports talk in St. Louis and then 2 in Oklahoma City before coming back to my hometown here in Southern Indiana, across the river from Louisville. And now they got me doing play-by-play again. So, and our main school will be New Albany. So I'll be getting to see a ton of Romeo and get to call some games, probably very poorly. Not him, but me. And I'm looking forward to that. As far as the schedule goes, obviously I love what Fred Glass and Archie Miller are trying to do. I think we're going to get into some of the questions about how the contract was worded. It at least leaves a couple of questions to be asked and hopefully answered. And while I'm thinking about it, and I'm just putting this on the record for when we get to March and we start talking about this a little bit more in depth, or maybe late February, as the case may be. I'm going to go ahead and go on record and say that the Big Ten doing the Big Ten tournament a week early in Madison Square Garden is going to fail miserably. I think when it's all said and done, I'm going to love watching it in Madison Square Garden. I do think there is some sort of an aura to that place, and I enjoy it. And I've liked visiting there and everything. But the whole week off thing, I think it's going to end up being something that a lot of people, not just coaches, but fans and the like, I think are all going to not really be a big fan of. I hope I'm wrong, because I kind of like Madison Square Garden, but that week off is going to feel like an eternity, and I think that's going to be like that for coaches, players, and fans, everyone involved. So I'm going to go ahead and go on record here, June 29th, saying that will be a miserable failure for however long that contract is. And there's my Zach Attack McCright Minute, whatever that may be.
Zamirs, it seemed like every move that the Big Ten makes to do something splashy and different winds up being a miserable failure. I completely agree with what Zach just said.
Yeah, I think
I hope that sorry, Andy. they were. Here's the one place where they were progressive, and that was the Big Ten Network. That was super progressive, and everyone has followed suit. And in every other walk, I feel like they have been followers. And this is just the next little notch in their follower belt.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we talk about the schedule, because it just kind of has a domino effect. Even that event in and of itself is one thing, but kind of the domino effect that has on the schedule is another. So we'll definitely talk about that. We do have a loaded show tonight. As we talked about, we're definitely hit on the schedule, a little bit more on that. Some additional reflections on the NBA draft. Talk a little bit about Yogi and some other NBA news for an IU fan favorite, if you will. We'll answer your Twitter questions as usual, and see what else we can get to on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. Before we do that, though, a quick word about this week's sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there's a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. It's the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events, and with SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. And there's nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you close to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone, and after FC Cincinnati, the soccer team here where I live's performance last night, certainly will be hitting them up for some tickets to games this season. I've got a couple girls who are pretty big fans of that in my house, and we've really gotten excited about it. And certainly to see Mitch Hildebrandt, who may never have to buy himself another drink here in Cincinnati after his performance in goal last night. We'll be heading out to some FC Cincinnati games for sure. So we definitely encourage everybody to go and use SeatGeek as you're buying tickets because they do their best to make the ticket buying experience easier than ever. Saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. And to get you the most bang for your buck, SeatGeek grades every ticket based on value to help you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. Every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence, and that way you can make SeatGeek your go-to app for finding the best deals on every type of ticket. Best of all, listeners here get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code ASSEMBLY today. It's promo code ASSEMBLY for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and Zach McCrite, and let's talk a little bit more about the schedule, guys. So just to kind of catch up what's happened in the past week, 5 games have been revealed through one way or another. 4 of those are part of what's being called the Hoosier Tip-Off Classic, which will kind of a round robin among these teams. Will feature games against Howard, South Florida, Arkansas State, and Eastern Michigan. And then today came out that Youngstown State is going to be coming to the Simon Scott Assembly Hall for a game as well. So the schedule is starting to shape up. And I guess maybe the easiest way to do this is to kind of get into some of the contract stuff. And a listener of ours, whose name I will get here in a moment, came up with a really well-worded and well-thought-out question.
Kent.
And so,
way to go, Kent.
Kent, yes. All right. And so we're going to talk through that. And so basically, here's kind of the background. So this week in Archie's contract, there's a section that says basically the athletic director and the coach are going to work to ensure that the schedule it meets and maintains the objectives of overall intercollegiate athletic programs. Ultimately, the schedule of games is a decision of the director of athletics. And then there's another section that we alluded to earlier. Once the schedule is finalized, no more than one regular season non-conference opponent has an RPI rating above 300 as reported on the final ratings of ESPN.com from the season prior. Archie would receive $125,000. So it's now been announced IU is going to play Howard, who ranked 339th in the RPI, and South Florida, who ranked 316th. Arkansas State was 120th, Eastern Michigan 173rd, and Youngstown State 252nd. So when you look at that, so the questions were, why did then Fred turn around and schedule Howard and South Florida, knowing they have such poor rankings, which essentially ensures that Archie won't get this bonus this first year? Fair question. And so one of his questions was whether the South Florida really counts against that because it's part of a tournament. I don't know that I would consider that a tournament. I'm not an expert enough on the language of the contract to know what the Hoosier Tip-Off Classic is in terms of in terms of a tournament or not. But Ryan, you kind of brought this up first. I guess what are your impressions of how the statements in the contract and then the actions that we've seen since then play together? Is it just a case of it was too late in the process and they had to just schedule who they could schedule, or is there more to it than that in your eyes? What's your take on that as a whole?
Well, in a lot of times, the scheduling thing is in progress at the end of the season prior. So he's negotiating, the athletic director is negotiating with schools to get, to fill out the schedule long before the schedule actually comes out. So I think this was probably something where it was being worked out months ago. They finalized the contract. That clause is in there. Maybe there's a forgiveness clause this year or something, clearly Archie's agent, whoever negotiated this for him, knew that there was a possibility that he wouldn't get that bonus this year. But, there's always things that could be worked out within the contract. If, hey, we didn't have a chance to alter the schedule to fit that contract right now, but or for this first year. So I don't think it's that strange that this happened this year. As far as the rest of the schedule, what has been leaked out, I think that looks like a solid schedule. It looks like a good, certainly a good group of teams to put together for a preseason, a pre-conference season schedule.
All right, well, we're going to hit a bit more.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I know we're up against it. We can talk about this next segment too. Yeah, it's all good. All
right, yeah, we're gonna bleed this into the next into the next segment here, because I think we've got more to talk about here. I think talking about the implications of what the Big Ten, the scheduling stuff that Zach talked about, and how that plays into what's going to be a really difficult stretch for IU is definitely something I want to hit on. So we will do that as we move forward here on the show. So stick with us. We'll be back in a couple minutes to talk more about IU schedule, and then hopefully it's some IU related NBA news as we go. All right, let me listen back to this real fast, make sure that it's still that everything sounds good, and we'll go from there.
You should definitely talk about the schedule, Andy, since you know more than you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, that sounded fine. Make sure I save this before it's too late.
Oh. Guy in the Braves just fouled the ball off his shin. That's the most painful thing I ever did to myself. High school, aluminum bat, just below the knee, all the way down to my ankle. Oh, it just ran down. It just ran down my leg. I couldn't walk for 2 days. It was the worst. Oh.
My worst on the baseball field was a bad hop came up and got me and damn near broke my nose at third base.
That happened to a guy I knew. Yeah. I think it hit under his eye, actually, and he had a huge cut.
Oh,
right
gosh, that's
here.
even worse. Yeah, I had just strings, just constant flows of blood from both nostrils. Nasty.
Man, little treat for the YouTubers out there.
How you guys doing? Good to see you.
Injury discussion. Good times. Good times. Good times.
Yes.
All right, let me make sure I actually captured how long this was, because that's going to be fairly important. 16:33. This is the part where we get to try to do math. I mean, everything's up big. All right, so we'll definitely hit a little bit more of the schedule. I'll just share a little bit of the RPI stuff around these handful of teams. I won't say that I know a ton, and then I know one of the Twitter questions at least was about it. But I do want to, Zach, I'll probably throw it to you when we.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Ryan took care of most. Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a stretch, I think, that just to tie back to your Big Ten stuff, because there's going to be a stretch where they play Duke, 2 Big Ten games, and then Louisville within a fairly short period of time.
Yeah, see, I thought, I don't know, that end of the year thing is going to suck, because their Big Ten tournament is first week of March, is like last week of February, first week of March. Then they have almost 2 weeks until the start of the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Yeah, that's and there's insane. Really not. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. You just don't have. I mean, maybe you get a really small conference whose tournament would be over, and you schedule a game just to kind of. But those are going to be really small leagues, and you're going to be playing mostly teams with zero motivation to do anything whatsoever. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, and plus, I don't even know if you're allowed to play a game after the conference tournament. Are you?
Oh,
I think you can. St. Mary's did it a few years ago. I think when Patty Mills got hurt, they were trying to. Right. They're trying to basically like prove he was healthy. And so they scheduled another game against somebody just to try to play a game, because the WCC gets over early, and I think they were trying to like show the committee something like that.
Jesus.
There was something there. I don't think there's anything that prevents it, but I think it's going to be hard finding a partner who wants to actually do the same thing. So,
I can't imagine them doing it. I can't imagine any Big 10 team doing it.
I would be surprised as well. I think it's just hard to find a partner to even do that with. But now then you have to fit your whole non-conference schedule into a much shorter window with all that. So you're either playing fewer games, making less money, or we can talk about all this as we go. All right.
Yep.
I'll get us going. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. This is Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and Zach McCright, and we were talking a bit more about IU's schedule and some of the developments that have come out from that lately. So just to kind of give a little bit of background from an RPI and KenPom standpoint about these teams that have gotten added. If you look, the best one of the bunch by a fairly wide margin is Eastern Michigan. They've been in the RPI the last 4 years. I looked at between 136th and 150th, so really consistent there. Averaged 128th in KenPom. I think they're a solid MAC team and should be pretty good from an RPI perspective. After that, the next best average is Arkansas State at 208th. They've been pretty up and down. Had a couple years in the hundreds, couple years in the 200s. So been a little bit up and down. The Sun Belt has gotten better from a basketball perspective though, so that will probably be another solid game. Then you drop down South Florida, average RPI the last 4 years 250. They had some issues with Orlando Antigua after he took the job, after he left as a Kentucky assistant, took the job. He got fired, I believe, midway through last season. So they're likely to be, I don't know if you can be rebuilding when you weren't that good to begin with, but maybe rebuilding. Youngstown State averaging 255th, playing in the Horizon League, which is going to take a little bit of a hit without Valpo. And then Howard from the MEAC is almost assured to be under the 300 mark there. They have been 3 of the last 4 years. And so, probably not a whole lot added there. But the one thing, Zach, to kind of circle back to what you brought up with the Big Ten, changing when the tournament is, because they have to start the conference season earlier, they've said they're basically going to play a couple Big Ten games right after the Big Ten ACC Challenge. So if you look at IU's schedule on the pieces of it that we know at this point, you've got a stretch where they play Duke in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. You're going to have 2 Big Ten games within a couple days of each other. I think Saturday and Monday or Sunday and Tuesday, something like that. And then they play Louisville the following Saturday. So within a maybe 10-day span, you've got Duke and Louisville and then 2 Big Ten games sandwiched in between. So it's one thing to say the Big Ten season is going to get over early, which presents its own set of challenges. But how do you look at a stretch like that early in what's going to be early December for a team that may still be kind of figuring it out under Archie Miller? What's your overall thought on how things look going into that stretch?
Yeah, it's going to be crazy, and I think it deserves repeating, Andy, that Big Ten, again, the Big Ten ACC Challenge game, the Duke game, is November 29th, and the Louisville game is December 9th. And in between, not only is it a small period, 10 days, but in between, you're likely going to have 2 Big Ten games, and we're not even through the first week of December. Let alone, you say early December. I mean, it's the first week. So, yeah, I think that's really going to be different. I mean, it just is. You're going to have, so in the stretch, you'll have Duke, Louisville, 2 Big Ten games, and then don't forget, Duke, 2 Big Ten games, then Louisville, then Notre Dame in the Crossroads Classic. So that's a nice little murderer's row. As far as the schedule as a whole, I mean, just to kind of piggyback off what Ryan said, I mean, the Gavitt games leave a little to be desired. I know you have to have some of those wins under your belt. At least it's not UMass Lowell, and at least it's not Mississippi Valley State, and at least it's not who was it? SIU, Edwardsville.
Any number of SWAC teams.
Houston Baptist.
Mississippi Valley State has been always a favorite. So yeah,
Grand Canyon.
Oh my gosh. So so it's better. It's better. Got no problem with it. And the only other thing I wanted to bring up was I do find it odd, as our listener that wrote in pointed out, that the schedule is ultimately up to the AD, but somehow the coach gets the bonus, which is really odd.
I think it's clear the coach has plenty of input.
I would imagine.
So I think it's more like he can tell him, hey, ease up the schedule this year a little bit if you can, or maybe propose people you should reach out to. So I think it's, I think that there's a little bit of a two-way street there. I think but it is on the AD to make the calls and make the deals. But I think that the coach does have some input.
And I would
what I think is weird about the contract piece is, so it talks about it's looking at the RPI from the season prior. So like you already know who you can and can't schedule. It just seems like, oh, you're given the answers to the test. Like if you fail the test in this case, it just kind of sets yourself up for the counter, essentially what what Kent asked when he emailed in the question of, well, if you as the AD can basically like give this guy $125,000 if you schedule a certain way. Now, again, I think starting next year, it'll be a bit more telling. Some of these teams are entered into agreements with other schools and how you fit, again, with the Big Ten, you've got shorter windows to try to fit some of these games in. Cause now you're going to have to try to figure out if you want to play 12, 13 non-conference games, where do they actually fit with the schedule that you have and the games that you now have to play. So I think that becomes challenging.
You've basically taken a week off your schedule. I mean,
yeah.
So you're going to have to fit the same amount of games in a week less schedule. So good luck.
Yeah. Other than that, everything seems great. Ryan, any closing thoughts from your perspective on the schedule and what we know so far?
I mean, I just gotta echo what Zach said in the last segment about the what the Big Ten tournament really does to all of these teams, not just IU, it's every team. It really hamstrings them because they're going to have to pack more games into less time. And then after the Big Ten tournament, you got 2 weeks to do nothing essentially before the NCAA tournament because you wanted to play it at Madison Square Garden and reach out to a New York market that doesn't care about, the Big Ten tournament. So I just think it's a terrible idea, terrible move, and hopefully this is the last time they do it.
Let me just add real quick, Ryan and Andy. The one thing that we haven't touched on as it pertains to the end of the season that I just think is worth taking a look at. I don't know how much the bracketologists, Andy, you can speak to this better than I, but the people in that room, surely if they're human, really pay attention to the last thing they saw. And the last thing they saw is really front of mind. And it may affect their seeding in some situations, even though I know a lot of it's done before the final weekend, before Selection Sunday. But, the Big Ten will be far off in the rearview mirror, and maybe a team like IU's on the bubble, and then somebody from the SEC, the Pac-12, you name it, the ACC comes in and maybe steals a bubble bid because it was the last thing they saw, and the Big Ten was a week ago. Maybe not. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, it's weird because in past years we've talked about the Big Ten championship doesn't actually mean anything because they would have so little time to really adjust to what happened in that game. So the Big Ten is apparently really overcorrected for what that is, and now we're going to be done well in advance and then see how it goes. But yeah, I think it's easy to get caught up in a bubble team who makes a run through their conference tournament, may not win it to get the automatic bid, but could be there. So yeah, it'll be interesting. A lot of interesting facets of that to watch, and we'll kind of see what happens with that. But so you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and Zach McCray. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about some post-draft thoughts. So we'll just kind of go in the order that these guys were picked or that they signed. So first is OG going to Toronto. So Ryan, what's your early impression of what his fit is on the roster? And were you surprised at all as the resident mock draft expert here that he dropped to 23rd?
Well, I was told that the Nuggets really liked him at 13, and then they traded out of that spot, so that kind of hurt him a little bit as far as a drop. But honestly, once you get out of the top 10, it's really a crapshoot where you go. At that point, you figure the top talent is gone, and the next group of guys are mostly you're going to get taken by a team that A, either needs you, or B, fell in love with you during the draft process. So you're going to see guys go higher than you thought. You're going to see guys go lower than you thought because, certain teams jumped up to get a specific guy they were targeting. You know, there's all those random trades and shuffling of picks. So I wasn't very surprised. I had OG in the 13 to 20 range, and he went lower than that, but I don't think he went much lower than that. You know, I mean, he was in that group, that next group. I think Toronto was a good fit for him. People have been asking me what I think you'll get out of him in his first year. He's going to be coming off major knee surgery, so I don't expect a whole lot out of him. I think he will play, but I don't think it's going to be a ton of games this year. I think they're going to try and bring him back slowly because he's 19. This is a pick for the future. This is not a pick for next year. But he's on a playoff team. He's on a team that is successful. He's on a team that has some depth and could be a contender. They've got to re-sign Kyle Lowry if they want to stay competitive. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. But that's a good team to go to. And he is being drafted as a long-term guy. He's not being brought in as a guy who, he's going to put us over the hump in the East. So you have to know that if they liked him that much to draft him in the first round, despite his knee injury, they have plans for him for the future.
So Zach, you lived in an NBA market and covered the Thunder during your time in Oklahoma. And what is, I guess, as you kind of look at the NBA today and how that's gone, your impressions of the league, how do you think OG fits in? And how do you think he can grow as a pro, going forward?
Yeah, I think, it does depend on how he comes back from injury. I mean, that's, who knows? Everybody comes back from a knee differently. So if you assume that he will be 100% sooner rather than later, I don't really know if there was a better fit than Toronto, just given the standpoint that if you assume that he is a 3, then you've got DeMarre Carroll, and then you really don't have anybody else that is a true 3 on that team, from what I can tell, or that will be at least coming back. So unless there's some sort of trade, I think from the depth charts that I've seen, the backup 3-man, and they differ. Obviously, I'm sure Serge Ibaka moves over and plays the 3 a little bit, if they want to play big and stuff like that. But if you're just talking true 3s, the second guy, the backup guy to DeMarre Carroll, was Bruno Caboclo, and he averaged 4 minutes a game. So at least it looks like there's a window there if he's back to normal. My guess is, like Ryan said, it's probably going to take a while, but I think I don't think I'm breaking any news here when I say that he looks like an NBA player. You know what I mean? Yep. Just with this raw athleticism, yep. He looks like an NBA player. I think if you're a 3, though, you got to be able to shoot from outside. And I think that's going to be the one thing that may be the litmus test for the entire career for OG. So we'll see.
Yeah, he's a classic 3-and-D man, I think, and those guys have become so valuable in the NBA. You see almost every team has to have one now. A guy who can hit an outside shot and defend multiple positions on the floor. He's a guy who can defend 1 through 4 on the floor easily, I think. This is all based on if he comes back healthy from the knee injury, because a lot of his game is based on athleticism. So he's going to have to come back at least in good shape. But yeah, I think he looks like he could be one of those 3-and-D guys. I'm not putting him in a category with, Draymond Green or Kawhi Leonard or guys like that, but that's the model he's got to try and aspire to.
All right, Ryan. So as our West Coast correspondent, we'll hit Thomas Bryant next. So he went 42nd to the Lakers. Were you surprised that he went that high, and what do you see from him from an NBA standpoint going forward?
Again, in the second round, it's a team falling in love with the player. I think you can throw out the rankings once you get to the second round. Once you get really to like 25, you can throw out the draft rankings or anything. It's usually they take a guy who came in for a workout that impressed them, regardless of where he's on the board, because, it's just a guy they like. And so the Lakers liked Thomas Bryant, and it's not hard to see why. Again, a guy with 2 years of college experience who's still only 19, who's, got 7'6" wingspan, runs the floor, athletic. There's a lot there. It's going to take a lot of developing. I think he's going to spend a lot of time in the D League this year trying to round out his game. But there's also room on that roster to make a move. If Vika Zubac is another 19-year-old center the Lakers have, who actually showed really well this year, and I think he's the starting center of the future for them. But they've got Brook Lopez in there now. His contract is up in a year. You figure Zubac moves into that spot. There's a wide open second team spot for Thomas Bryant there. And with his ability to step out on the floor, if he improves his ball handling and improves his shooting, he could even be sort of a modified stretch four and be on the floor at the same time as that guy. So I think it's a great fit for Thomas as long as he continues to work his tail off and develop his perimeter game and develop his ball handling and things like that. And just, smooths out the edges of his game defensively, all of that stuff. I think he can be in the NBA for a long time.
All right, and Zach, just to wrap us up here quickly, thoughts on James Blackman Jr. Signs with the 76ers, will play for them in the Summer League. What are your overall thoughts on his prospects, not necessarily just with them, but chance he makes the NBA just because of that one elite skill, or is he a guy who ends up either in the D League or overseas?
Yeah, I mean, put your head down and pray, right? I mean, I think my one thing I would say on it, well, besides the fact that Markelle Fultz is going there, right? I think what you do if you're an IU fan is you don't look at Yogi's success coming from the route he did and look at it as, well, if he can do it, you just the way Yogi did it, just for IU fans that think James Blackman can do the same thing, that ain't easy. That ain't, what Yogi did was beat a ton of odds that my guess is 90 to 95% of other players who sign as a free agent after not being drafted can. So if I would consider a win for him this year, being able to stick in the G League all season long. That, in my opinion. But who knows? The Sixers are a funky bunch. It seems like they're on the uphill slide, but who really knows? We'll see.
All right. Well, we are done with NBA talk, and after we get back from the break, we'll answer the questions that you send in via Twitter. That's next here on the Assembly Call. All right, 16:47. So we have used up a lot of time already, so we need to be quick on these questions. It's 32, 30.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking we would go with another Twitter question to draft its own segment.
Yeah. All right, I didn't see that till later.
Yeah, way to pay attention, Andy.
Well, it's a lot to ask. A lot to ask. All right, so we're already at 33 minutes, so we got 50 total. So we can spend probably.
We don't have a whole lot of Twitter questions, do we?
There's not a ton because some of them are schedule based, and so
we can even hit those and just kind of quickly, just because.
Yeah, there's one that talks about the kind of the big games, like which ones we think are most winnable or something. So we can definitely hit that one. Let's export this.
I think the what song describes being an IU fan should definitely go last.
I have no answer for that. So,
oh my god.
What about what current IU player would you most want to have your back in a street fight? That should be the last question.
It would have been OG for me last year.
Oh, dude, those legs, man.
Who would it be now?
His thighs were enormous.
Might be Freddie McSwain, maybe.
I know who.
Juwan Morgan.
Those are both very good
I should probably say Robert. I should say Robert Johnson.
Should. He's crafty.
Yeah. Junkyard Dog. They talked about.
I
that guy shows up with a broken bottle and.
I got my guy. We should do it on the count of three just to see if all of us.
No way. That sounds terrible.
All right, I'll do. So the first question around scheduling teams because of style of play. I'm not going to lie and say that I know a ton about these. I did look at a couple of stats.
You just take that one.
Might be useful for a couple, so I can take that one. Then we'll go to top 3 toughest tests in the non-conference. We can definitely talk about that one. I'll move the street fight one to the end. That might be a good one to end on.
Yeah, it's a good one to end on. Just keep posting how much time's left because if I have no idea, I don't contain myself. Like every 5 minutes or so, or 3 minutes or something.
So then if we think final segment, we could talk a little bit about, probably worth mentioning, Yogi getting second team all rookie, because I think I mentioned it in the opening.
Okay.
And then other than that, I
We'll
don't
just see
know
how much time we have.
Yeah, I know. So we
Let's see
kinda
how much time we
see
have
where we're
going
at.
into that one before we
Okay.
plan
All right.
anything out.
Good deal. Alrighty. We will get started in a second. All right, welcome back to the Assembly Call. This is your host, Andy Bottoms, with Ryan Phillips and Zach McCray talking IU basketball. Remember to go to assemblycall.com/join to activate your free membership. You'll get our weekly 6-banner Saturday news roundup delivered right to your inbox each Saturday or Sunday morning. You can stay up to date with the Hoosiers during the offseason and even once the season begins. URL for that is assemblycall.com/join. Remember, once the season gets started, you can join us after every IU basketball game over at assemblycall.com and every week right here for Assembly Call Radio. All right, so as we've done for these past few weeks, Twitter Q&A. So the first question comes from Ian. Coach Archie Miller said you schedule teams because of style of play. Of the non-conference opponents that were announced, which teams play a specific style like zone or press? I will attempt to take this one. At some point in the past, before I was coaching soccer or t-ball or basketball or whatever, I probably would have had better answers for some of these, but I did look at some of the stats on KenPom for the teams that were announced this past week. I kind of took Howard out of the equation. The MEAC is typically one of the worst conferences out there, so I'm not sure that style of play is a huge factor from that standpoint, but a couple of them did stand out. Youngstown State is one. If you just look at the tempo numbers, they really like to get out and run. So I think that could be a fast-paced game. I know even Coach Green used to talk about that, wanting to try to play different styles. So I think that's a game that'll be a little bit more up and down. A chance to play against the team. Can you defend against a team who's really looking to score quickly? And then Eastern Michigan is another one. I am fairly certain that the coach there is a Boeheim disciple, and they have, if you look at their length of defensive possessions on there, would suggest they might play some zone. So I am not 100% sure of that. I have not been to Ypsilanti, Michigan, to watch Eastern Michigan play, but I do believe that.
Yeah, beautiful city. Beautiful city.
I know. But I do think Murphy is the coach's last name. I do think he's some reason it sticks in my head that he was a Syracuse guy. So I think you might see a little bit of that. Obviously not going to be quite the same as what you get from Syracuse, but again, a different style that maybe a little bit less used to. Certainly some of the bigger name teams will have a little bit better idea of what they do stylistically, but at least of the ones that were announced this week, I think those are the ones that, based on history of the coaches and things like that, seem to stand out in that regard. The next one from Indiana, all for you. In your opinion, what would you say is Indiana's top 3 toughest tests within the non-conference portion of the schedule? And as a follow-up, which top 3 game are we most likely to walk away with a W? Zach, I'll go to you first on that one. Top 3 toughest tests, although there's really like 4 big games on the – so, you're really just saying which one of at Seton Hall, Duke, at Louisville, and Notre Dame you think doesn't fall in the top 3. So maybe the second part of that question is the most pertinent.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably just throw out Seton Hall in that mix and go with the other 3. I think Louisville, maybe that question would have been a little bit tougher before Louisville, out of the clear blue, picked up the Bowen kid that was all set to go to Michigan State and then backed out late in that game. So Louisville seems to be a team that might be right back in the thick of things amidst all the things that are going on off the court. So I'll say Louisville and Duke are probably the toughest to win this year. I think your kind of swing game for me is Notre Dame this year. I think we're at the point now where a win anytime over Notre Dame in that Crossroads Classic, the times that we play them, you're coming out feeling pretty good about yourself. I mean, it really is amazing what Mike Bray has done there, and I think it doesn't get talked about nearly enough. But I think if you come out of there with a win against Notre Dame, a lot of people will be feeling good about themselves and what I think would be a fairly winnable game relative to the rest of the schedule.
Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I would completely agree with Zach, which I don't like to do. I like to argue with you guys. But no, I think it's Duke, Louisville, and probably in that order. Because of the way Mike Brey coaches, I think Seton Hall might actually be a better team, but because of how Mike Brey coaches and how he gets his teams to play, I think that Notre Dame game looks a little tough. Again, the Seton Hall game, you are traveling to play. So maybe those two are interchangeable. I do think Notre Dame is the most winnable of those games. But then again, I think that playing Duke at home is, I don't think that I don't want to say that's winnable. It's certainly winnable. I don't want to say that's a sure, I feel confident about winning that game, but Duke's going to have a lot of guys, a lot of new guys. It's going to be early in the season, and it's going to be on the road at Assembly Hall. Never an easy place to play, obviously. So, I would say that Duke, I am more confident in the Duke win than Louisville at this point.
I think Seton Hall is going to be a really tough game. I mean, they return 4 guys who scored at least 10 points a game. They've got a really good big man in Angel Delgado, who is going to be a huge test right out of the chute for Deron Davis and whoever is trying to back him up inside. He averaged 15 points, 13 rebounds a game last year. So while Caleb Swanigan was getting a lot of headlines for racking up double doubles, and rightfully so, Delgado was doing it at a roughly the same clip. So that's a really tough road game given where it is early in the season. So I'd put that right up there with the Duke and Louisville games. I think the ones that seem most likely to win would feel like Notre Dame, and then maybe Duke just because it's at home. I kind of agree with what you said there, Ryan. But I think you come out of those 4 with a split at 2-2, given they're all going to have taken place so early in the season. By mid-December, all those games will be over because the Notre Dame game is the last of those, and that's Saturday, December 16th. I think they find a way to split those and go 2-2. I think you come out feeling really good. That may be wishful thinking on my part, but I think that's a good goal to have at least. But I think all should be tough for sure. You're listening to the Assembly Call. This is Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and Zach McCright answering your questions about IU basketball. And our next question comes from Chris. Can Colin Hartman actually stay healthy all year this year? I put no offense in parentheses, so hopefully none taken from Colin. Zach, what are your thoughts on Hartman? He's had different injuries, multiple knee injuries, had the wrist injury a couple years ago in the tournament. Do you buy into the whole injury-prone thing, or has it just been kind of fluke things that you think he's able to get past this year?
Well, I kind of feel the same way about him. Well, let me start here. First off, no one really knows, right? I mean, who knows? It's just sometimes it's just freak things. I'm curious. The first thing that popped in my head was, gosh, you all worried about Hartman. I worry about Morgan too.
Yep.
I mean, it's like Morgan's the same way. So there are some question marks in terms. I kind of do sometimes. How can you not, as an IU fan, buy into a little bit of the IU might be a little injury prone sort of thing, given how the last couple of years have gone? I mean, we might have a couple injury prone guys. Maybe it's just complete happenstance, but with James Blackman and with Hartman, Morgan, I mean, the list goes on. I feel like a lot of these guys are just cross your fingers and hope. But in terms of can he stay healthy? I mean, I guess. I feel like it's a totally unanswerable question, but I feel like I am crossing every bone in my body, every appendage, in the hopes that we stay healthy for one season, just one.
Yeah, it's funny in light of all the injury stuff. On the latest episode of Podcast on the Brink, Jared and Alex Bozich talked to Maurice Creek. So even if you go back a few years, other kind of injury related things. So I think I've got that on the brain because of that, if for no other reason. But Ryan, what are your thoughts on Hartman?
Here's my answer. Can he stay healthy? Sure. Will he? I have no idea. And just based on the way things have gone, I'm not confident that IU can get through this year without health problems. Here's hoping they can. Here's hoping the training staff, does a phenomenal job this year. Here's hoping we get luck, on our side this year, which we haven't had for a while. So, of course he can make it through a season healthy. The question is, will he? And here's hoping. I really do, because I think he's a key part to the roster. I think he was going to be a key part to the roster last year. It was really a shame that he missed out on that year.
Let me throw kind of a question related. Do you like the fact that Archie is kind of a small squeeze the roster, squeeze the rotation sort of guy, given the injury problems that we have? Or would you like him to maybe expand the bench a little bit further, at least during the regular season, just so there isn't any overuse problems?
Well, I think that it's all going to depend on health and things like that. I mean, coaches adjust based on what they've gotten, and they also adjust based on talent. He's going to have more talent than he's ever had. So we don't know, what he operates like when he has a deeper roster. So I would say, that might be his pattern so far, but then guys change. So we'll see what happens. I think that, you've got to get the younger guys in at least some, especially on this roster because of what you're missing and what left. But yeah, I think that ideally you'd like to have a little bigger rotation than he's had in the past. But again, coaches adjust based on talent and based on the situation.
All right, last question. We'll go quickly here. This comes from Nate. What current IU player would you most want to have your back in a street fight? Ryan, you first.
Oh, it's my boy Deron Davis. You know that. There's no question. He's the big guy. You got to take the big guy. Come on.
That's definitely the guy, right? Last year it would have been OG.
Clifton Moore might have the reach on him, though. If it's a boxing style, thing, he might have the reach. So I don't think that's
a bad fight. It's not like it's not like a real boxing match. It's a street fight. Zach, what about you? You going Deron as well?
I got to go Deron, right? I mean, I'll tell you who I'm not taking. That I think people would they would. I'm not taking Juwan Morgan based on injuries. I'm not taking him. His shoulder's all messed up. How's he gonna get a swing in? No way.
It's true. That's an excellent point. He was on consideration for me. The two I would throw out, I mean, Robert Johnson obviously is the president of the Robert Johnson fan club. Max Bielfeldt, after when talked about how much of a junkyard dog type of guy Rojo was after he went down a couple years ago. So that's one possibility. Freddie McSwain might actually be the other, based on some of the workout videos they've shown of him recently.
He would be second. He would be second.
He's challenging the strength coach to different things. So I feel like that's at least a confident guy that you've got in a street fight. So we'll go there. I think the good news is there's a few options, and I think there are times when I think Archie's going to want this team to play like it's a street fight defensively. So hopefully that'll be a good metaphor for what we see as we move forward. So with that, we'll wrap up our Q&A, and we'll get ready to close things down here. Coming up in our last segment, we will talk a little bit about Yogi and an honor he received last week, and see what other kind of trouble we can get into in the last few minutes of the show. Stay with us. All right, that's 12:02. So we only have basically about 4 minutes based on when I need to.
Why don't you just do it then? Why don't you just do the last? I mentioned that he, because if we bounce around, we're going to go over, I think.
Well, you need to not do that then. Anything else to hit?
No,
quickly.
Just talk about you. I would say
sense.
We don't have enough time.
We'll talk about that. I'll kick it to one of you at least, so it's not just me talking for 4 minutes. I got to figure out when I got to start the outro. I got to do more math here in a second. 4:28. I need 36 seconds. I think this is. Zach, we should make you do this when Jared's not here. You've got far more, chops in the radio related industry.
What do you? I can do the math for you real quick. How much time you got?
This is like the blind leading the blind.
He's talking. I think he's talking about the.
I just mean the whole thing. I just mean all of the word. I'm just kidding.
Oh no, I'm too fresh. I'm too much of a rookie. No way.
All right, I gotta start that at 3:52. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right, I will. I should probably actually save this. Save this last segment. That seems like a good thing to do.
So funny that Joel Embiid made first team all rookie. It's like he's still a rookie.
Did he even get to 30 games? How many games did he play?
32, but he was dominant. He was easily the best rookie, but he just didn't play enough.
Yeah, those people thought he should have won would have still won Rookie of the Year even based on that.
Word association. If I give you Duke and Assembly Hall, what's the first thing you think of?
Marco Killingsworth.
Is that not the answer? I feel like that's. I don't even know what would be said.
I was there in the front row during that, man. That was.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was covering it for the IDS in college. I was the columnist.
I didn't cover that game. I covered the UConn game, which was, I think, the following year.
No, they played UConn later in
Year
that
before.
season. Yeah, because they played two #1 teams. I was at both of those games.
And I don't know how it was for the Duke game, but I was there for the UConn game as a media member, and I can't. That's still the loudest it's ever been for me in there.
Yeah, the Duke game was probably 50% louder.
Oh my gosh!
And it was the kind of thing where it was that loud in warmups, and then it was as loud as the loudest moment of the UConn game in warmups. Like the hair on my shoulders and back of my neck were standing up the entire game. I had to legitimately yell into the ear of the guy next to me to talk to him during the game. And that was during timeouts, during breaks, it never stopped. There were no assembly, because assembly hall can get really quiet when, during commercial breaks and all that stuff. It was the only time I've ever been at a game there where it never did that. It was unbelievable. So I also love that year. That was the year that everybody during the UConn game was doing the "Where's my laptop" chants because Marcus Williams had stolen laptops.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
I forgot all about that.
Classic college heckling. All right, so Yogi.
Classic college heckling. Yeah, we'll do Yogi. We can even talk a little bit about them drafting Dennis Smith, just as kind of what that means for him looking forward to his second year. That can be something to – maybe that's how I'll kick it over or something like that.
Okay.
All right. So I got to start the outro at 3:52. All right. I can handle that. All right. Let's get started and wrap it up. All right, you're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips and Zach McCright, just wrapping us up another week's worth of conversation on IU basketball. And one other bit of IU, or I guess post-IU news that came out over the course of the week was that Yogi Ferrell got named second-team All-Rookie after, playing a couple different spots over the course of the year, being, undrafted, as Zach mentioned earlier. And, really an exciting honor for him. His contract option also got picked up by the Mavericks, so he's going to be there next year as well, and will be pushed for playing time, I'm sure, by their first-round draft pick, Dennis Smith from NC State. But Ryan, what do you take away from Yogi's almost a freshman season? I'm still in college mode. His rookie season in the NBA, and also what you think of them bringing in Dennis Smith and what that might mean for Yogi in the short term.
Well, to be fair to Yogi, he started 29 of the 36 games he played in Dallas. So he was a starter. I mean, that was, and this is also a team that was, Mark Cuban says he doesn't tank, but they gave every appearance of doing that. But I think that you bring in Smith, a lot of times in the NBA, you're just trying to add talent. And Smith is a very talented guy in the backcourt. I think he and Yogi could actually play together at some times because Smith is athletic enough where he could probably guard shooting guards. Yogi, obviously his size hinders him from doing that. But even if Yogi is just a backup for now with them, that's still a great spot to be in the NBA they picked up the option on his contract. They clearly believe in him. So I think he's going to be involved there. It does help that Mark Cuban is the owner, an IU guy who has praised Ferrell, consistently. So I don't think it's really that. It's not a huge negative that they brought Smith in. This isn't, the old style NBA where every slot had to be filled, a point guard, a true shooting guard, a small forward, a power forward. I mean, it's a lot more of that positionless basketball we hear about so often. So I think the two of them could actually work together. I don't know if he'll be starting next year. I don't know if Smith will be starting. We'll see how that goes. But NBA teams are just looking to add talent, and at that point in the draft, I thought Smith was probably the right pick, even though I'd love to see Yogi as the starting point guard there. But it was a great honor for Yogi to be All NBA second team rookie, and it shows that how hard he's worked to get where he's at.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we'll just have, brief time for Yogi appreciation. So Zach, in the next 20, 30 seconds, what's your favorite memory of Yogi during his time at IU?
Oh, dear God. The first thing that came to mind was the UK game. I mean, I'm sure there were others. Maybe it's the last thing I saw. But, the quintessential, right? The quintessential. It's I'll say this. I haven't seen many players come from the depths of nowhere in the NBA to getting called out on Twitter positively by the owner of the team. I get the IU connection. I get that he's very talkative, Cuban I'm speaking of, in social media, but it doesn't happen very often. So I think Yogi's in a pretty good spot. And if it doesn't work out, I'm pretty sure he's proven himself enough to maybe get picked up elsewhere. So he's got a couple of years still left ahead of him, if not more.
Yeah, I would agree. Best one for me, I was at the game where he broke the assist record at IU with my dad in a really exciting game. So that one was cool. He played really tough defense in that as well on Illinois. So that'll do it for us, though, as we got at least some good Yogi memories in over the end of the show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live simulcast of the Assembly Call radio recording. Or you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join to activate your free membership today. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. And that was good. I finished a little soon and forgot to start the music at the end. Perfect.
You can add that.
Okay. All right. Well, that'll be all right. I clicked on it. It just never started playing.
Jared can probably add that before you send it in.
Yeah, I'm sure he can. All right. Export.
All right, Phils, I got to get to work.
All right. Sounds good.
Always good chatting with you.
Appreciate it, Zach. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Zach.
Yep. See you guys soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for everybody who watched on YouTube, and we will talk to everybody next week.
Later, folks.
Later.